The velvet silence of the Gilded Shard was the kind of quiet that cost $5,000 an hour just to sit in. It wasn't the absence of sound that made it expensive. It was the absence of consequences. 40 stories above the smog and chaos of Chicago, where the architecture was made of glass and the people were made of ice, this restaurant existed as a temple to a very specific kind of worship. Power. The kind that didn't need to announce itself because everyone already knew who held it. Noemi Solis moved through the dining room like a ghost in a black silk vest, her steps measured and silent against the imported Italian marble. She was 23, with the calculated grace of a fallen ballerina, and eyes that had seen too much for someone who was supposed to be just a service professional. Her dark hair was pulled back so tight it could have been painted on, and her hands never shook, even when carrying a tray worth more than most people's cars. To the elite patrons, she was part of the furniture. Useful, forgettable, replaceable. That was exactly what she wanted them to think. Because Noemi wasn't there for the tips. She wasn't there for the health insurance, or the chance to rub elbows with Chicago's wealthiest criminals and corporate sharks. She was there because 3 years ago, her brother had walked into a coffee shop to meet a client, and never walked out. Marcus Solis, brilliant coder, terrible judge of character. He'd been contracted to build what the client called a dark cloud server, a digital vault that couldn't be traced, hacked, or shut down by any government on Earth, the kind of technology that made dictators salivate and intelligence agencies lose sleep. The trail had led her here, to this restaurant, the unofficial clubhouse for the Syndicate Noir, a network so deeply woven into the city's infrastructure that trying to separate them from Chicago would be like trying to remove bone from flesh. She'd applied for the job 18 months ago under a false reference, a fake smile, and a real desperation that the hiring manager had mistaken for enthusiasm. She worked double shifts, not to pay rent, though her studio apartment in Pilsen was 3 months behind. She worked to stay close to the conversations that happened over vintage cognac and blood-rare steaks. She lived in a perpetual state of high alert, her mind a steel trap for names, dates, account numbers, and the kind of details that powerful men dropped when they thought the help was too ignorant to understand. Tonight, the dining room glowed like the inside of a jewellery box. Crystal chandeliers threw fractured light across tables draped in cream silk. The smell of seared wagyu and truffle oil hung in the air, mixing with the faint chemical tang of expensive cologne. 12 tables, 48 guests. All of them wealthy, most of them dangerous. Noemi had memorised every face, every name, every shell company and offshore account that got whispered in the shadows between courses. She refilled a water glass for a man in a charcoal suit who owned half the South Side's real estate and all of its misery. He didn't look at her. They never did. She was a function, not a person. It was the greatest camouflage she'd ever worn. Across the room, near the kitchen's swinging doors, Cyrus Vance stood with his arms crossed, watching her the way a warden watches an inmate he suspects of planning an escape. Cyrus was the manager, though the title didn't do justice to the scale of his ego or the depth of his cruelty. He was a man who lived for the taste of other people's fear, who wore suits that cost more than Noemi made in a year, but never quite managed to hide the jagged edge of his insecurity. He had the kind of face that looked like it had been handsome once, before bitterness carved lines around his mouth and paranoia hollowed out his eyes. He knew Noemi was different. She didn't flinch when he barked orders. She didn't blush when he tried to corner her in the walk-in freezer, with comments that were just vague enough to avoid a lawsuit. Her defiance was a stain on his perfectly controlled environment, and stains needed to be scrubbed out. What Cyrus didn't know was that Noemi had been keeping a second set of books. Every discrepancy in the private room charges, Every bottle of $1,000 wine that disappeared from inventory but never appeared on a receipt. Every cash payment that went into Cyrus's pocket instead of the register. She had dates, amounts, names. She kept it all in a small notebook she carried in her apron, written in a code Marcus had taught her when they were kids. Just in case, he'd said. Just in case you ever need to remember something someone doesn't want you to know. She'd never imagined she'd be using it to track her own manager's embezzlement from the Mafia. The kitchen doors swung open, and a blast of heat and noise spilled into the dining room before being swallowed by the silence again. One of the younger waitresses, a girl named Tessa, who couldn't have been more than 19, stumbled out carrying a tray of champagne flutes. Her hands were shaking. Noemi caught her eye and gave a small, steadying nod. Tessa exhaled and steadied herself. Noemi had spent the last year protecting the younger staff from Cyrus's worst impulses, running interference, taking the blame for mistakes that weren't hers. It was a dangerous game, but she'd learned a long time ago that the only way to survive a system designed to chew you up was to make yourself indispensable to the people it was also trying to destroy. The evening rolled on. Appetizers became entrees, entrees became desserts. The conversations grew looser as the alcohol flowed, and Noemi's ears sharpened. She caught fragments as she moved between tables. A land deal in Gary, a shipping container that went missing in the port, a judge who needed to be convinced to see reason. And then, at table 7, she heard it. A name that made her blood turn to ice. Phantom Protocol. That was the code name Marcus had used for his project. She'd seen it once, scrawled on a napkin in his apartment the week before he disappeared. She thought it was a game he was designing, some side project to keep his mind busy. But now, hearing it spoken in a low, careful voice by a man in a navy suit with a scar running down his left cheek, she understood. It wasn't a game. It was the server. And it was here, somewhere in this building. Her hand tightened on the tray she was holding. She forced herself to keep moving, to keep her face blank. But her mind was screaming. She was close. After 18 months of searching, of living in fear and exhaustion, she was finally close. She turned toward the bar to grab another bottle of wine, and that's when she felt it. The weight of a gaze. Not the casual, dismissive glances she was used to. This was different, focused, deliberate. She looked up, and her eyes met his. Dante Volkov sat at table 0, the centre table that was always reserved and never listed on any reservation system. He was there every Friday, like clockwork. The ghost of Chicago. The man whose name was whispered in boardroom meetings and back alleys alike. He didn't just own the building, he owned the streets beneath it, the people who walked them, and the fear that kept everyone in line. He was striking in a way that felt predatory. Tall, with the kind of build that suggested violence was always an option, but rarely necessary. His hair was dark and perfectly cut. His suit was black and probably cost more than a sedan. And his eyes were the colour of a winter sky just before a storm. He had a stillness about him that was more terrifying than any scream. He didn't move, didn't blink, just watched. And for the first time in 3 months of serving him, his eyes were locked directly on Noemi. Not as a waitress, not as part of the scenery, but as someone he had been studying, someone he recognised. Her heart slammed against her ribs, but she didn't look away, couldn't. Because in that moment she understood something that made her stomach drop. Dante Volkov hadn't just been sitting at that table every Friday by coincidence. He'd been watching her, learning her, waiting. The question was why. And the answer, she suspected, was about to change everything. Dante Volkov wasn't a man who did anything without purpose. He didn't waste time, money, or words. He operated with the precision of a surgeon and the patience of a sniper. So when he arrived at the Gilded Shard every Friday at exactly 8 in the evening, ordered the same meal, a bone-in ribeye cooked rare, and a single glass of bourbon, no ice, and left exactly 90 minutes later, it wasn't routine, it was ritual. And rituals in Dante's world were sacred. Table 0 sat in the centre of the dining room, positioned so that he could see every entrance, every exit, and every face without turning his head. The table itself was different from the others. The wood was darker, older, imported from a monastery in Prague that had been demolished in the 50s. It had been a gift from a Russian arms dealer who'd owed Dante his life. The dealer was dead now, but the table remained. Most people feared Dante because of the stories. The ones about the politician who tried to double-cross him and ended up driving his own car into the lake with his family still inside. The ones about the gang leader who'd thought he could move product through Dante's territory without paying tribute, and was found 3 weeks later, alive, but missing his hands and his tongue. The ones about entire businesses that collapsed overnight because Dante had decided they were no longer useful. But the people who really understood power, the ones who operated in the same shadows Dante did, they didn't fear him because of the violence, they feared him because of the order. Dante Volkov ran Chicago like a machine. Every piece had a function, every person had a role. Step out of line, and you weren't punished out of anger. You were removed out of necessity. It was never personal, it was structural. He believed in loyalty, but only the kind that was earned and tested. He believed in respect, but only when it was mutual. And he believed, above all else, that everyone mattered. Not in some sentimental, humanistic way, but in the cold, logical sense that every person was a component in a larger system. Treat them as disposable, and the system breaks down. Treat them as tools, and they work. That's why he'd been watching Noemi Solis for the past 4 months. He'd first noticed her in October, when a new shipment coordinator had tried to skim a percentage off a delivery to one of the private rooms. It was small, barely noticeable, the kind of thing most managers would have missed or ignored. But Noemi hadn't. She'd caught the discrepancy, reported it to Cyrus, and when Cyrus had tried to bury it, probably because he was doing the same thing, she'd quietly corrected the inventory herself and made sure the client got exactly what they'd paid for. Dante had been sitting at table 0 when it happened. He'd seen the whole thing play out in her body language. The way she'd double-checked the invoice, the way she'd confronted Cyrus in the hallway, her voice low but firm, the way Cyrus had dismissed her, and the way she'd gone around him to fix the problem anyway. Most people would have walked away, let the system eat itself. But Noemi had integrity, and integrity in a place like the Gilded Shard was rarer than the truffles they shaved over the pasta. So Dante had started paying attention. He'd noticed the way she memorised orders without writing them down, the way she positioned herself in the room to overhear conversations, the way she protected the younger waitresses from Cyrus's harassment, stepping in with excuses and redirections that kept them safe without making it obvious. She was smart, strategic, and she was looking for something. Dante didn't tolerate spies in his territory, but Noemi wasn't a spy. She was a soldier, and soldiers Dante respected. He'd had his people run a background check. Noemi Elena Solis, born in Pilsen, raised by a single mother who died of cancer when Noemi was 16. One sibling, a brother named Marcus, who'd gone missing 3 years ago under suspicious circumstances. No criminal record, no debt except for the medical bills from her mother's treatment, which she was still paying off in instalments so small they'd take her another decade to clear. But the interesting part was what happened after Marcus disappeared. Noemi had dropped out of college, where she'd been studying forensic accounting, and had started working a series of jobs that all had one thing in common. They put her in proximity to people connected to the Syndicate. A bartender at a club owned by a shell company, a receptionist at a law firm that laundered money, and now a waitress at the Gilded Shard. She was hunting, and Dante knew exactly what she was hunting for. Because 3 years ago, Dante had hired Marcus Solis to build the Phantom Protocol server, a digital fortress that could store, encrypt, and move information across borders without leaving a trace. Marcus had been brilliant, one of the best coders Dante had ever worked with. But Marcus had also been naive. He'd started asking questions. Where was the server going to be used? Who was going to have access? What kind of information was going to be stored? Dante had answered honestly because he respected the kid's intelligence. But honesty in that world was a death sentence. One of Dante's competitors had found out about the project and had decided that if they couldn't have the server, no one could. They tried to kill Marcus. Dante had intervened, but not in time to stop the kidnapping. He'd recovered Marcus alive, but the damage was done. The kid had been traumatised, broken. Dante had placed him in a secure facility, not as a prisoner, but as a protected asset, until he could figure out who'd ordered the hit and how deep the betrayal went. He'd been planning to tell Noemi, eventually, when the time was right, when he was sure she could handle the truth without doing something reckless that would get her killed. But now, sitting at table 0 and watching her move through the dining room with that same careful, calculated grace, he realised the time was running out. Cyrus Vance was spiralling. Dante had seen it before. Desperation made people dangerous, and Cyrus was drowning in debts he couldn't pay and crimes he couldn't hide. He was looking for a scapegoat. And Noemi, with her sharp eyes and sharper mind, was the obvious target. Dante took a slow sip of his bourbon, the liquid burning smooth and warm down his throat. He set the glass down without a sound and leaned back in his chair, his eyes never leaving Noemi. She was standing near the bar now, her back straight, her face composed, but he could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her fingers drummed once, twice, against the tray she was holding. Something had rattled her. He scanned the room, tracking her sightline, and landed on table 7. The man in the navy suit, the one with the scar. Dante's jaw tightened. That was Gregor Lahn, a mid-level operator who worked for the same people who tried to kill Marcus. If Gregor was here, talking about the Phantom Protocol, it meant the server was active. And if the server was active, it meant someone had forced Marcus to finish it. Dante's hand moved to the edge of the table, his fingers tapping once in a rhythm his security team would recognise. Within seconds, one of his men, a tall, silent figure in a black suit, appeared at his shoulder. "Gregor Lahn," Dante said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "I want to know everything he said tonight. Every word, every name, and I want to know who he's meeting after he leaves." The man nodded and disappeared into the shadows. Dante's gaze returned to Noemi. She was walking toward the kitchen now, her movements steady, but he could see the storm building behind her eyes. She was close to something, too close, and if she pushed too hard, too fast, Cyrus would strike. Dante had spent 4 months watching her survive. Now, he was going to have to decide if he was willing to let her burn, or if he was going to step into the fire with her. The choice, he realised, had already been made the moment he'd looked into her eyes and seen a reflection of himself. a person who refused to be broken, a person who would tear the world apart to find the truth. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small black coin, the kind he only used when he needed to send a message that couldn't be misunderstood. He placed it on the table, the metal cold and heavy against the wood. The reckoning was coming, and Noemi Solis, whether she knew it or not, was about to become the most dangerous piece on the board. Cyrus Vance was a man who understood fear the way a pianist understands keys. He knew which pressure points to press, which words to use, which silences to let hang in the air until they became unbearable. He'd spent 20 years climbing the ranks of Chicago's service industry, from busboy to floor manager, to his current position at the Gilded Shard, and he'd learned early that power wasn't about strength. It was about control, about making people believe you could destroy them, even if you didn't have the means. But lately, the control was slipping. It had started 6 months ago, when Cyrus had made the mistake of thinking he was smarter than the people he worked for. The Syndicate Noir didn't pay him much, not officially. His salary was respectable, enough to keep him in tailored suits and a decent apartment in Lincoln Park, but it wasn't enough. Not for the life he wanted, not for the life he deserved. So he'd started skimming. Small amounts at first, a few hundred here, 1,000 there, taken from the private room charges that the clients paid in cash and never questioned. It had been easy, too easy, and Cyrus, drunk on his own cleverness, had gotten greedy. Now he was $73,000 in debt to a loan shark in Macau, who'd made it very clear that if the money wasn't repaid by the end of the month, Cyrus's fingers were going to be repaid instead, one at a time, starting with the pinkies and working inward. The Syndicate's auditors were coming. He'd gotten the message 3 days ago, buried in a text from his supervisor that read like casual small talk, but wasn't. They'd be here by the end of the week, going through every receipt, every transaction, every bottle of wine that had passed through the restaurant in the last year. And when they found the discrepancies, and they would, Cyrus would have 2 choices. Confess and beg for mercy, which in the Syndicate meant a quick death if he was lucky, or pin it on someone else and hope they believed him. Noemi Solis was the obvious choice. She was smart, he'd give her that. Too smart. She asked questions that waitresses weren't supposed to ask. She noticed things that waitresses weren't supposed to notice. And worst of all, she didn't fear him. Every time he tried to assert his authority, every time he raised his voice or got in her space, she just looked at him with those dark, unreadable eyes and waited for him to finish. Like he was a tantrum she had to endure, not a threat she needed to respect. He hated her for that. But hate was useful. Hate gave him clarity, and clarity gave him a plan. Tonight was the private event for the city's most corrupt developers, the men who built luxury condos on land they'd stolen and housing projects designed to collapse. They were loud, demanding, and they tipped poorly. But they were also important. The kind of people who could make Cyrus's story believable if he framed it right. All he needed was a disaster. Something public. Something that would make Noemi look incompetent, reckless, and worthy of blame. So he'd prepared the floor. It had taken him 20 minutes in the early morning, before the staff arrived, to apply a thin, nearly invisible layer of industrial lubricant to the marble near the service entrance. It was the kind of product used to polish the floors, so even if someone noticed the faint sheen, they'd assume it was part of the cleaning routine. But when weight and momentum hit it at the right angle, it turned the floor into an ice rink. He'd chosen the target carefully. A decanter of bourbon that was over a century old, valued at $10,000, and currently assigned to table 0, Dante Volkov's table. If Noemi dropped it, the loss would be catastrophic. The humiliation would be total. And Cyrus, in his role as the diligent manager, would have no choice but to terminate her on the spot, in front of everyone. The beauty of it was that it wasn't technically his fault. He hadn't forced her to carry the decanter. He hadn't pushed her. He'd just created the conditions. And in a court of law, or in the court of the Syndicate, conditions weren't crimes. The evening began exactly as planned. The developers arrived in their German cars and Italian shoes, loud and self-important. They filled the dining room with cigar smoke and entitlement, demanding the best of everything and complaining about the things they got. Cyrus played his role perfectly. Obsequious, efficient, always one step ahead of their needs. And then, at exactly 9:30, he sent Noemi to retrieve the bourbon. He watched from the shadows near the kitchen as she walked to the bar, her movements smooth and professional. She picked up the decanter, cradling it carefully in both hands, and began making her way across the dining room toward table 0. Cyrus's heart was pounding now, adrenaline sharpening his focus. This was it, the moment everything would shift in his favour. Noemi's foot hit the oiled section of floor. For a split second she seemed to hover, her body fighting for balance. And then physics took over. Her ankle twisted. The decanter flew from her hands, spinning in the air like a piece of shrapnel. The crash was deafening. Glass exploded against the marble, and the bourbon, dark and viscous, spread across the white floor like an ink blot. The dining room went silent. Not the comfortable, expensive silence of earlier. This was the silence of a funeral, of a disaster, of a mistake that couldn't be undone. Noemi was on the ground, her knees bruised, her uniform stained with bourbon and glass shards. Her hands were cut, small beads of blood mixing with the alcohol. But she didn't cry, didn't apologise. She just looked down at the mess, her expression unreadable. Cyrus felt a surge of triumph so powerful it made him lightheaded. He stepped forward, his face already arranged into an expression of fury and disappointment. This was his moment, his performance, and he was going to make it count. "What the hell did you just do?" His voice cut through the silence like a whip. Noemi looked up at him, her eyes sharp despite the pain. "The floor was slick. I checked it this morning. It wasn't like this." Cyrus felt a flicker of panic. She was already deflecting, already trying to shift the blame. He couldn't let that happen. He moved closer, looming over her, his voice rising. "You checked it. You. You're a waitress, Noemi. You don't check anything. You do what you're told. And what you were told to do was carry a $10,000 piece of history across a room without destroying it. And you failed." "I didn't fail," she said quietly, her voice steady. "Someone sabotaged the floor." The panic turned to rage. She wasn't supposed to fight back. She was supposed to crumble. He pointed at her, his hand shaking. "You are a worthless, gutter-born mistake. You've been a problem since the day you walked in here, and I've been too generous, too forgiving. But not anymore. You're done. You're fired. Get out. I'm not leaving until you explain why you were the last person in this section before service started." Her voice was louder now, cutting through his tirade. "I checked the logs, Cyrus. You signed in at 6 this morning, alone. What were you doing here?" The room seemed to tilt. The developers were watching now, their faces lit with the kind of interest people have when they sense blood in the water. Dante Volkov, still seated at table 0, was watching too. His expression hadn't changed, but there was something in his eyes, a weight, a judgment. Cyrus realised in that moment that he'd miscalculated. He'd thought the destruction of the bourbon would be enough, but Noemi had just connected him to the sabotage, in front of the most dangerous man in Chicago. And if Dante started asking questions, if he started investigating, Cyrus's embezzlement would come to light. The loan shark, the skimmed cash, all of it. He couldn't let that happen. So he did the only thing his desperate, cornered mind could think of. He lunged forward and slapped Noemi Solis across the face, with all the force his fear could muster. The sound of the slap echoed in the silence like a gunshot. Noemi's head snapped to the side, her body spinning from the impact. She hit the edge of the mahogany table and her lip split open, blood bright and immediate against her pale skin. For 3 seconds, no one moved, no one breathed. And then Dante Volkov stood up. He didn't rush, didn't shout. He simply unfolded from his chair with the slow, inevitable movement of a man who had just decided someone's fate. He walked toward them, his footsteps silent against the marble, and the entire room seemed to shrink around him. Cyrus felt his bladder threaten to give out. This wasn't supposed to happen. Dante Volkov didn't get involved in staff disputes. He was a customer. A powerful one, yes, but still just a customer. He wasn't supposed to care about a waitress. But Dante wasn't looking at Cyrus. Not yet. He was looking at Noemi. He reached out with a gloved hand, his movements careful, almost gentle, and tilted her chin up so he could see the bruise forming on her jaw, the blood on her lip. His eyes scanned her face with the precision of a jeweller examining a diamond for flaws. "You have a very rare gift, Noemi," Dante said, his voice a dark, melodic rasp that sent shivers down the spines of everyone listening. "The ability to remain elegant while being surrounded by filth." He released her chin and turned to Cyrus. And in that moment, Cyrus understood what it meant to be seen by Dante Volkov. Not as a person, not as an employee, but as a problem that needed to be solved. "Cyrus," Dante said quietly, his voice so calm it was terrifying, "you've spent your life thinking that power is something you use to crush those beneath you. But true power is knowing that nothing and no one is beneath you. Everyone is a component, and you just broke a vital part of my machine." Cyrus opened his mouth to respond, to explain, to beg, but no sound came out. His throat had closed. His hands were shaking so hard his cufflinks rattled. Dante reached into his pocket and pulled out a small black coin. He placed it on the nearest table with a soft click that sounded like a judge's gavel. The signal had been sent, and Cyrus Vance, for the first time in his life, understood what it felt like to be powerless. The black coin sat on the table like a death sentence, small and unassuming, but carrying the weight of absolute authority. Everyone in the room who mattered knew what it meant. Liquidate and sanitize. A total shutdown. The kind of order Dante Volkov gave maybe once a year, and only when someone had crossed a line so severe that there was no walking back. Cyrus felt his legs go weak. He wanted to run, but his body wouldn't obey. His mind was screaming at him to move, to apologise, to do something, anything. But all he could do was stand there and watch as the doors to the dining room clicked shut from the outside. The sound was soft. Final. Within 30 seconds, Dante's private security entered. They didn't come in like a SWAT team, loud and chaotic. They moved like shadows. 6 men in black tactical gear, their faces expressionless, their movements efficient. They weren't there to arrest anyone, they were there to dismantle. One of the developers, a man in his 50s with a gut that strained against his vest, stood up from his table. "What the hell is this? You can't just lock us in here. I have rights. I have lawyers." One of Dante's men stepped in front of him, not touching him, just standing there. The developer sat back down. No one else moved. Dante walked slowly back to table 0, his hands clasped behind his back, his expression calm. He didn't look at Cyrus, didn't acknowledge the trembling man at all. Instead, he addressed the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the disruption to your evening," Dante said, his voice carrying easily across the silent space. "But it has come to my attention that this establishment has been operating under a system of corruption and cowardice, and I don't tolerate either." He gestured to his men, who immediately began moving through the dining room. They went to the walls first, pulling down the framed artwork, the decorative sconces, the carefully curated pieces that had cost a fortune. They stacked them in the centre of the room without care. Then they moved to the bar, sweeping bottles of $1,000 liquor into large plastic bins. The sound of glass clinking against glass was the only noise. Noemi, still on the floor, watched in stunned silence. Her lip was still bleeding, and her hands were shaking now, not from fear, but from adrenaline. She'd seen Dante Volkov from a distance for months, had served him 100 times, but she'd never seen him like this, in control, unleashed. One of the security team members approached the computer system behind the bar, the one that controlled the reservations, the billing, the inventory. He didn't try to log in, he just ripped the entire tower out of the wall, cords snapping, and carried it toward the exit. "Wait!" Cyrus finally managed to croak out, his voice strangled. "You can't do this! This is private property! You're just a customer! You can't—" Dante turned to him, and the look in his eyes was so cold that Cyrus's words died in his throat. "I'm not a customer, Cyrus," Dante said softly. "I'm the owner. I have been for 3 years. You've been working for me this entire time. You just didn't know it." The revelation hit Cyrus like a physical blow. The Gilded Shard wasn't owned by some faceless corporation in New York, the way he'd been told. It was owned by Dante Volkov, which meant every dollar Cyrus had stolen, every shortcut he'd taken, every lie he'd told, had been under Dante's watch. "I'm closing the restaurant," Dante continued, his tone conversational, almost pleasant. "Effective immediately. But I'm not firing you, Cyrus. That would be too kind." He nodded to one of his men, who stepped forward and handed Dante a thin manila folder. Dante opened it, glanced at the contents, and then held it up so Cyrus could see. It was a ledger. A detailed, meticulous record of every transaction Cyrus had skimmed over the past 6 months. Dates, amounts, even the account number in Macau where he tried to hide the money. "I've just purchased your personal debt," Dante said. $73,412. You don't work for me anymore, Cyrus. You belong to me. And tonight, you're going to help my men scrub every inch of the sewer lines beneath this building until your fingernails bleed. After that, we'll discuss the money you stole." Cyrus's knees buckled. One of the security team members caught him before he hit the ground, not out of kindness, but because Dante hadn't given permission for him to fall yet. Dante turned away from Cyrus as if he no longer existed and walked over to Noemi. She was still sitting on the floor, her eyes wide, her mind trying to process what was happening. He crouched down in front of her, his movements slow, deliberate. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a silk handkerchief, black with silver stitching along the edges. He pressed it gently to her split lip, wiping away the blood with a care that seemed at odds with everything else happening in the room. The gesture was surprisingly tender, yet there was an unmistakable edge of possession in it, like he was cleaning something that belonged to him. "You've been looking for your brother, haven't you?" Dante said quietly, his voice low enough that only she could hear. Noemi froze. The secret she had guarded so fiercely, the one she'd buried under 18 months of fake smiles and careful lies, was laid bare. Her breath caught. She wanted to deny it, to deflect, but the look in Dante's eyes told her it would be useless. "How long have you known?" she whispered. "Long enough," Dante replied. He pulled the handkerchief away and examined her face, his gaze clinical, but not unkind. "Marcus Solus, brilliant coder, terrible judge of character. He built something for me 3 years ago, something that made him a target." Noemi's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. "Where is he? Is he alive?" Dante stood, offering her his hand. She hesitated for only a second before taking it. His grip was firm, steady, and he pulled her to her feet with an ease that reminded her just how much physical power he held in reserve. "I found him weeks ago," Dante said, his voice still quiet, but carrying a weight that made her knees feel weak again. "He was being held by the same man you just let slap you." Noemi's eyes snapped to Cyrus, who was now being held upright by 2 of Dante's men. He was working with them? "Not working with them," Dante corrected. "Working for them. Cyrus wasn't just a manager, Noemi. He was a jailer. Your brother has been in the sub-basement of this building for the past 8 months, finishing the server he started 3 years ago. They've been using him, and Cyrus has been making sure no one asks questions." The air left Noemi's lungs. The sub-basement. She'd walked over her brother's prison every single day for 18 months and never known. The rage that flooded her system was so intense it made her vision blur. She took a step towards Cyrus, her hands balling into fists, but Dante's hand on her shoulder stopped her. "Not yet," he said. "There's a process to this." He gestured to his men, and they began hauling furniture out of the dining room. The heavy mahogany tables, the custom chairs. Even the chandeliers were being carefully removed from the ceiling. The Gilded Shard was being stripped down to nothing, piece by piece, in front of the 48 guests who sat frozen in their seats. Dante walked back to the centre of the room, his hands in his pockets, his posture relaxed. He looked around at the developers, the lawyers, the criminals in expensive suits who had built their fortunes on the suffering of others. "The Gilded Shard is gone," Dante announced. "In its place, I'm building a fortress. A place where business will be conducted under a new set of rules. Transparent, accountable, fair." He let the words hang in the air for a moment, and then he smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of a predator who'd just cornered his prey. "And I need a queen who knows how to spot a lie before it's even spoken." He turned back to Noemi and held out a set of keys. They were small, silver, attached to a ring with a single emblem, a stylized raven. Next to the keys, he placed a heavy, leather-bound folder on the nearest table. "You're not a waitress anymore, Noemi," Dante said. "You're the auditor. Anyone in this city who wants to do business will have to go through you first, starting with the men at these tables who watched him hit you and said nothing." Noemi stared at the keys, at the folder, at Dante's outstretched hand. This wasn't a rescue, it was a recruitment. And the cost of saying yes would be stepping into a world far more dangerous than the one she'd been navigating. But the alternative was walking away, leaving her brother in the hands of people who would use him until there was nothing left, leaving Cyrus unpunished, leaving herself powerless. She reached out and took the keys. Dante's smile widened, just a fraction. "Good. Now, let's go get your brother." He turned and walked toward the kitchen, and Noemi, still holding the keys, followed. Behind them, Cyrus let out a broken, choking sob, and the sound of it was the sweetest thing she'd heard in 3 years. The sub-basement of the Gilded Shard wasn't on any blueprint. It didn't appear in the building's official records, and the only way to access it was through a hidden elevator in the walk-in freezer, the kind of place where health inspectors never bothered to look too carefully. Dante led the way, his stride confident and unhurried, while two of his men flanked Noemi. She was still gripping the keys so tightly her knuckles had gone white. The elevator descended in silence. The walls were bare concrete, the air cold and stale. Noemi's mind was racing. Her brother was alive. After 3 years of searching, of grief that had hardened into obsession, Marcus was alive. But the relief was tangled with rage. He'd been here, 20 feet below her the entire time, and Cyrus had known. The elevator stopped with a soft chime that felt obscene in the tension. The doors opened into a narrow hallway, lit by harsh fluorescent lights. The walls were lined with server racks, their blinking lights casting strange shadows. The hum of cooling fans filled the air, a low mechanical drone that set Noemi's teeth on edge. At the end of the hallway was a reinforced steel door. Dante approached it and punched a code into the keypad. The lock disengaged with a heavy clunk and the door swung open. The room beyond was small, maybe 12 by 12, dominated by a massive workstation covered in monitors, keyboards and tangled cables. And sitting at the centre of it all, his back to the door, was a man Noemi hadn't seen in 3 years. Marcus. He was thinner than she remembered, his shoulders hunched, his hair longer and unkempt. He wore a faded hoodie and jeans that looked like they hadn't been washed in weeks. But when he turned around at the sound of the door, his eyes, those sharp, intelligent eyes that had always seen too much, locked onto hers. For a moment, neither of them moved, and then Marcus stood, his chair scraping against the concrete floor, and Noemi crossed the distance between them in 3 strides. She wrapped her arms around him, and he held her back, his grip tight and desperate, like he was afraid she'd disappear if he let go. "You're real," Marcus whispered, his voice hoarse. "I thought I was hallucinating again." "I'm real," Noemi said, her voice breaking. "I'm here. I found you." Marcus pulled back, his hands on her shoulders, his eyes scanning her face. "You shouldn't be here. It's not safe. They won't do anything," Dante interrupted, stepping into the room. His tone was calm, matter of fact, because they're no longer in control. Marcus stiffened at the sound of Dante's voice. He looked past Noemi, his expression shifting from relief to something colder. "Volkov." "Marcus," Dante replied, nodding slightly. "You've done good work. The server is operational, exactly as I asked." "You didn't ask," Marcus said, his voice hard. "You forced me. You held me here for 8 months. You think that's the same thing?" Dante didn't flinch. "I didn't hold you here, Marcus. I moved you here. There's a difference. The people who kidnapped you 3 years ago wanted to kill you. I wanted to keep you alive. Unfortunately, keeping you alive meant keeping you hidden, and keeping you hidden meant making you uncomfortable." "Uncomfortable?" Marcus's laugh was bitter. "You locked me in a basement and made me build a weapon for criminals." "I locked you in a basement and made you build a tool for survival," Dante corrected. "The Phantom Protocol isn't a weapon, it's a ledger. A record of every transaction, every deal, every bribe and blackmail that moves through this city. And once it's fully operational, it will make corruption impossible to hide." "You didn't build a weapon, Marcus. You built accountability." Marcus stared at him, his jaw tight. Noemi could see the conflict in her brother's face. He wanted to hate Dante. He should hate Dante. But the logic was sound, and Marcus had always been someone who valued logic over emotion. Why now? Noemi asked, turning to Dante. If you've had him here for 8 months, why tell me now? Why not just keep him hidden? Dante met her gaze, his expression unreadable. Because the server is almost complete, and once it goes live, everyone who's been using this city as their personal playground is going to come looking for it. I need someone I can trust to manage it, someone who understands what's at stake. Marcus built it, but you, Noemi, you're the one who's been living in the fire. You know how to survive, how to fight, and you know how to make the hard choices. He stepped closer, his voice dropping. Your brother is brilliant, but brilliance without protection is just a target. I'm offering you both protection, but it comes with a price. What price? Noemi asked, though she already knew the answer. Loyalty, Dante said simply. You work for me. You use the server to audit every deal, every transaction, every person who wants to do business in my territory. You become the gatekeeper. And in exchange, I make sure no one ever touches either of you again. Noemi looked at Marcus, who was watching her with a mixture of hope and dread. She thought about the past 3 years, the jobs she'd worked, the lies she'd told, the night she'd spent awake wondering if her brother was even alive. She thought about Cyrus's hand across her face, the humiliation, the powerlessness. And then she thought about the keys in her pocket and the leather-bound folder upstairs. I want to see the records first, she said. All of them. I want to know exactly who I'm auditing and what I'm protecting. Dante's lips curved into a faint smile. I expected nothing less. He pulled a tablet from his coat and handed it to her. The screen lit up, displaying a list of names, dates, and transactions. Noemi scrolled through it, her trained eye catching discrepancies, patterns, connections. It was a web of corruption so vast and intricate it made her stomach turn. Politicians, judges, corporate executives, even a few names she recognised from charity galas and news interviews. But one name caught her attention and made her blood run cold. Leonard Kess, her mother's oncologist. The man who had overseen her treatment, who had promised Noemi that everything would be fine, that her mother just needed one more round of chemo, one more experimental drug. The man who had billed them for treatments her mother never received and pocketed the insurance money while her mother suffered. He's on the list, Noemi said quietly, her voice shaking. Kess. He's been stealing from terminal patients for years. Dante nodded. He has. And he's scheduled to be at the opening of my new establishment next week. You'll have the opportunity to confront him. Publicly, privately, however you choose. Noemi looked up at him, her eyes burning. And if I choose to destroy him? Then you destroy him, Dante said. But you do it smart. You do it clean. And you do it in a way that sends a message to everyone else on that list. He gestured to the tablet. This is your weapon now, Noemi. Use it wisely. Marcus cleared his throat. Noemi, you don't have to do this. We can leave. We can disappear. You can what, Marcus? Noemi interrupted, turning to her brother. Run? Hide? We've been running for 3 years, and where did it get us? You locked in a basement, me serving drinks to the people who put you there. I'm done running. She turned back to Dante, her decision made. I'll do it, but I have conditions. Dante raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. Marcus goes free. No more basements, no more guards. He works on the server because he wants to, not because he has to. And if he wants to walk away, he walks away. No consequences. Dante considered this for a moment, then nodded. Agreed. And I want access to everything, Noemi continued. Every file, every transaction, every name. No secrets. Agreed. And I want Cyrus. Her voice was cold now, sharp as broken glass. I want to decide what happens to him. Dante's smile returned, wider this time. He's already yours. I told you. You're the auditor. Justice is your jurisdiction. Noemi took a deep breath, her heart pounding. She was stepping into a world she didn't fully understand, making a deal with a man who was as dangerous as he was powerful. But for the first time in 3 years, she wasn't powerless. She wasn't invisible. She was the one holding the keys. Then let's go back upstairs, Noemi said. I have some auditing to do. Dante gestured towards the elevator, and the three of them, Noemi, Dante, and Marcus, stepped inside. As the doors closed and the elevator began its ascent, Noemi looked down at the tablet in her hands. The first name on the list was waiting, and she was ready. The dining room of the Gilded Shard looked like the aftermath of a controlled demolition. Tables were overturned. Chairs were stacked haphazardly against the walls. The chandeliers had been removed, leaving bare wires dangling from the ceiling like exposed nerves. Dante's security team moved through the space with mechanical efficiency, cataloguing every piece of furniture, every bottle of liquor, every scrap of value. And at the centre of it all, still seated at their tables because they hadn't been given permission to leave, were the 48 guests. Developers, lawyers, lobbyists, the people who shape Chicago from the shadows. They sat in silence, their faces ranging from confusion to barely concealed terror. When the elevator doors opened and Noemi stepped out, flanked by Dante and Marcus, the room seemed to hold its breath. Noemi's uniform was still stained with bourbon and blood. Her lip was swollen and her eyes were red from crying. But there was something different about her now, a stillness, a certainty. Dante walked to the centre of the room, his hands clasped behind his back, and addressed the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologise for keeping you waiting, he said, his voice carrying effortlessly. I know you all have very important places to be. Fundraisers, meetings, mistresses. A few nervous laughs rippled through the crowd, quickly silenced. But before you leave, I need to make something very clear, Dante continued. What happened here tonight wasn't an accident. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a test, and most of you failed. He gestured to Noemi, who was standing beside him now, the tablet still in her hands. This woman was assaulted in front of you, publicly, violently, and not one of you said a word. Not one of you stood up. You sat there in your expensive suits, drinking your expensive wine, and you watched. The room was silent. That tells me everything I need to know about who you are, Dante said. It tells me that you value your comfort over your integrity, your safety over your courage, and that makes you predictable, which makes you controllable. He pulled a small remote from his pocket and pressed a button. The remaining screens in the restaurant, the ones mounted on the walls for displaying menus and wine lists, flickered to life. But instead of menus, they showed names, dates, amounts. The same information Noemi had been scrolling through on the tablet. The guests stared at the screens, their faces draining of colour. This is the Phantom Protocol, Dante said. A complete record of every dirty deal, every bribe, every backroom arrangement that's been made in this city over the past 5 years. And starting tonight, it's going live. Anyone who wants to do business in my territory will have their transactions recorded, verified, audited. He gestured to Noemi again. And the person doing the auditing will be Miss Solis. She has full access to every file, every name, every secret. And if she finds a discrepancy, if she finds evidence of theft, exploitation, or coercion, there will be consequences. One of the developers, a man in his 60s with a red face and a reputation for cutting corners, stood up. "You can't do this. This is extortion. This is accountability," Dante interrupted, his voice sharp. "Something you spent your entire career avoiding. Sit down." The man sat. Dante walked slowly through the room, his eyes scanning the faces of the guests. "Here's how this is going to work. Each of you will receive a personal audit within the next 30 days. Miss Solis will review your records, your transactions, your business dealings. If everything is clean, you'll be cleared to continue operating. If it's not, you'll have the opportunity to make things right. Repay what you've stolen. Correct what you've broken. And if you refuse..." He stopped in front of a table where 3 men sat, all of them lawyers who specialised in helping corporations dodge environmental regulations. "Then you'll be removed, quietly, permanently, and your assets will be redistributed to the people you've harmed." The threat hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. "Now," Dante said, his tone lightening slightly, "I'm not unreasonable. I understand that some of you have made mistakes, that you've been operating in a system that rewarded corruption. I'm offering you a chance to change that, to be part of something better. But that chance comes with a price." He nodded to Noemi, who stepped forward, the tablet glowing in her hands. "The price is honesty," Noemi said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "You will submit to the audit, you will answer my questions, and you will accept the consequences of your actions. In exchange, you'll be protected. No one will come after you as long as you're clean. No one will threaten your family, your business, or your life. But if you lie to me, if you try to hide something, I will find it, and Dante will deal with you." She looked around the room, meeting the eyes of the men and women who had watched her be humiliated and done nothing. Starting with the people at this table. She pointed to table 7, where Gregor Lahn sat, the man with the scar who had been talking about the Phantom Protocol earlier. "You ordered the hit on my brother 3 years ago. You tried to have him killed because you wanted the server for yourself. And when that didn't work, you hired Cyrus to keep him locked up and finish the job." Gregor's face went pale. He opened his mouth to deny it, but Noemi held up the tablet, showing a screen filled with transaction records, phone logs, and encrypted messages. "I have everything," Noemi said. "The payments you made, the messages you sent, the orders you gave. You're not walking out of here, Gregor. Not tonight. Not ever." Dante gestured to his men, who moved toward table 7. Gregor tried to stand, tried to run, but one of the guards placed a hand on his shoulder and pushed him back into his seat. The pressure was gentle, but the message was clear. Resistance was futile. "Take him to the holding area," Dante ordered. "Miss Solis will decide his fate after she's had time to review the full extent of his crimes." Gregor was dragged from the table, his protests echoing through the empty restaurant until the door slammed shut behind him. Noemi turned to the next table, her eyes cold. "Who's next?" For the next hour, she moved through the room, calling out names, reading crimes, holding people accountable. A lobbyist who had been funneling money from public housing projects into his own offshore accounts. A judge who had been taking bribes to dismiss cases. a real estate developer who had been using shell companies to evict low-income families and flip their homes for profit. Some of them tried to deny it. Some of them begged. A few tried to offer deals, money, favours, anything to make it stop. But Noemi didn't waver. She had spent 3 years watching these people operate with impunity, and now, for the first time, they were being forced to face the consequences. By the time she finished, 12 people had been removed from the dining room. 20 people who would wake up tomorrow in a very different world than the one they'd gone to sleep in. The remaining guests sat in stunned silence, their faces ashen, their hands trembling. Dante walked back to the centre of the room, his expression calm. The rest of you are free to go. But remember what you saw here tonight. Remember that silence is a choice, and choices have consequences. He nodded to his men, who unlocked the doors. The guests stood slowly, gathering their coats and bags, and filed out of the restaurant without a word. None of them looked at Noemi. None of them looked at Dante. They just left, disappearing into the cold Chicago night. When the last guest was gone, Dante turned to Noemi. "You did well." Noemi didn't answer. She was staring at the empty room, her hands still gripping the tablet. The adrenaline was wearing off now, and the reality of what she'd just done was starting to sink in. She'd just sentenced 12 people to fates she didn't fully understand. She'd just stepped into a role that made her judge, jury, and executioner. "Are you okay?" Marcus asked quietly, stepping up beside her. Noemi looked at her brother, at the concern in his eyes, and nodded. "I will be." Dante gestured toward the elevator. "There's someone else who needs to answer for what happened tonight, and I believe you have some unfinished business with him." Noemi's gaze hardened. Cyrus. She'd almost forgotten about him in the chaos. Almost. "Where is he?" she asked. "Downstairs," Dante said, "in the sewer lines, where he belongs." Noemi handed the tablet to Marcus and followed Dante toward the elevator. As the doors closed behind them, she felt a strange sense of calm settle over her. The fear was gone. The doubt was gone. All that was left was a cold, focused determination. Cyrus Vance had spent his life making other people feel small, making them feel powerless. Tonight, Noemi was going to show him what powerlessness really felt like, and she was going to enjoy every second of it. The sewer lines beneath the Gilded Shard were exactly as disgusting as Noemi had imagined. The air was thick with the smell of waste and decay, and the walls were slick with condensation and things she didn't want to think about. The only light came from industrial work lamps that Dante's men had set up, casting harsh shadows that made the tunnels look like something out of a nightmare. Cyrus was on his hands and knees in 6 inches of filthy water, scrubbing the concrete with a wire brush. His expensive suit was ruined, soaked through and stained beyond repair. His hands were raw and bleeding, his face pale and streaked with grime. 2 of Dante's men stood nearby, watching him with the detached interest of people who had seen this before. When Noemi and Dante descended the ladder into the tunnel, Cyrus looked up. For a moment, hope flickered in his eyes, like he thought she might be there to save him. But when he saw the expression on her face, that hope died. "Noemi," he rasped, his voice hoarse from shouting. "Please, this is insane. You know me. I made a mistake. I was under pressure. I didn't mean to—" "You didn't mean to slap me?" Noemi interrupted, her voice cold. "You didn't mean to sabotage the floor? You didn't mean to hold my brother captive for 8 months?" Cyrus's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Noemi crouched down in front of him, careful not to get too close to the water. "You spent 2 years making my life hell, Cyrus. 2 years of harassment. 2 years of watching you humiliate people who couldn't fight back. And you did it because you thought you were untouchable. You thought that as long as you kept the powerful people happy, nothing else mattered. She stood, brushing off her knees. But you were wrong, because the powerful people don't care about you. They never did. You were just a tool. And when tools break, they get replaced. Cyrus scrambled to his feet, water dripping from his clothes. I can fix this. I can pay back the money. You can't fix anything, Noemi said, because this isn't about the money. This is about the fact that you thought you could hurt people and get away with it. That you could lie and steal and abuse and no one would ever hold you accountable. She pulled the tablet from her coat and scrolled through the records until she found Cyrus's file. You've been skimming from the restaurant for 6 months. $73,000. But that's not even the worst of it. You've also been taking bribes from suppliers to use substandard ingredients. You've been falsifying health inspection reports. And you've been blackmailing staff members into covering for you. She looked up at him, her eyes hard. You destroyed lives, Cyrus. Not because you had to, but because you wanted to. Because it made you feel powerful. Cyrus sank back down into the water, his shoulders shaking. What are you going to do to me? Noemi looked at Dante, who was leaning against the tunnel wall, his arms crossed. What do you think I should do? Dante shrugged. He's yours. I told you. Justice is your jurisdiction. Noemi thought about it. She thought about the years of abuse, the humiliation, the fear. She thought about Marcus, locked in a basement, forced to build something he didn't believe in. She thought about all the people Cyrus had hurt, all the lives he'd damaged. And then she thought about what kind of person she wanted to be. You're going to finish scrubbing these tunnels, Noemi said finally. Every inch. And then you're going to work off your debt. Not to Dante, to the people you stole from, the suppliers you shortchanged, the staff members you blackmailed. You're going to pay them back, with interest. And you're going to do it by working in the new establishment Dante is building, as a janitor. Cyrus's eyes widened. A janitor? You can't be serious. I'm completely serious, Noemi said. You wanted power so badly, Cyrus. You wanted to feel important. Well, now you get to see what it's like on the other side. You get to be the person everyone looks down on. The person no one notices. And maybe, after a few years of that, you'll understand what you put other people through. She turned to Dante. And if he tries to run, or if he tries to hurt anyone else, then you deal with him. Permanently. Dante nodded. Fair enough. Cyrus let out a broken sob, his hands covering his face. Noemi felt a flicker of something, not quite pity, but not quite satisfaction either. She'd wanted to destroy him, to make him suffer the way he'd made others suffer. But looking at him now, broken and pathetic, she realised that destruction wasn't justice, it was just revenge. And revenge didn't fix anything. Get him cleaned up and put him to work, Noemi said to Dante's men. I'm done here. She climbed the ladder back up to the restaurant level, her legs shaking from adrenaline and exhaustion. Marcus was waiting for her at the top, his expression worried. You okay? He asked. I will be, Noemi said again, and this time she almost believed it. Dante emerged from the tunnel a moment later, brushing off his coat. You showed mercy. That was smart. It wasn't mercy, Noemi said. It was pragmatism. Dead men can't pay back what they owe. Dante's lips curved into a faint smile. Like I said, smart. He gestured toward the elevator. Come on, there's one more thing I need to show you before the night is over. Noemi and Marcus followed him back upstairs, through the gutted remains of the dining room, and into a private office that Noemi had never seen before. The walls were lined with bookshelves, and a massive desk sat in the centre, covered in blueprints and architectural plans. Dante spread the plans out across the desk, and Noemi leaned in to look. They showed a building, sleek and modern, with reinforced walls and state-of-the-art security systems. At the centre of the building was a large open space labelled Audit Floor. "This is what's replacing the Gilded Shard," Dante said. "A fortress, a place where business can be conducted transparently, where deals are recorded, verified and audited in real time. And at the centre of it all will be you." He pointed to a smaller room on the plans, labelled Auditor's Office. "You'll have full access to the Phantom Protocol, full authority to approve or deny transactions, and full protection from anyone who tries to interfere." Noemi stared at the plans, her mind racing. This was real. This wasn't just a job offer or a power play. Dante was building an entire system around her, and the weight of that responsibility was almost too much to bear. "What if I'm not strong enough?" she asked quietly. "What if I make the wrong call?" Dante looked at her, his expression unreadable. "Then you'll learn from it, and you'll do better next time. That's all anyone can do." He handed her a pen. "Sign here if you accept. If you don't, you and Marcus are free to walk away. No consequences, no hard feelings. But if you sign, you're committing to this, to the work, to the responsibility, to the fight." Noemi took the pen, her hand trembling slightly. She looked at Marcus, who gave her a small, encouraging nod. And then she looked at the plans again, at the vision of something better, something cleaner, something that might actually make a difference. She signed her name. Dante took the contract and tucked it into his coat. "Welcome to the fortress, Miss Solis. Or should I say, Auditor Solis." Noemi managed a small smile. "Just Noemi is fine." "Noemi it is," Dante said. He extended his hand and she shook it. His grip was firm, steady, and for the first time in years, Noemi felt like she was standing on solid ground. But as they stood there, in the wreckage of the Gilded Shard, Noemi couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning, that the real fight was still ahead, and that the people she'd just held accountable tonight were only the first wave. Dante's phone buzzed, and he pulled it from his pocket. His expression darkened as he read the message. "What is it?" Noemi asked. "Your brother just sent a message," Dante said quietly. "The server is about to activate, and if we don't stop it in the next 6 hours, everyone whose name is in the system will be erased, including you." Noemi's blood turned to ice. "What do you mean, erased?" Marcus stepped forward, his face pale. "The Phantom Protocol has a failsafe. If it detects a security breach, it wipes all records and destroys all backups. It's designed to protect the information from being stolen. But if it's triggered accidentally, it could delete everything. Every name, every transaction, every piece of evidence." Noemi stared at him. "Can you stop it?" Marcus nodded. "Maybe, but I'll need access to the main server, and I'll need time." Dante was already moving toward the door. "Then we don't have time to waste. Let's move." Noemi grabbed Marcus's arm and followed Dante out of the office. The fortress was being built. The system was in place. But if they didn't stop the failsafe, everything they'd just fought for would disappear, and the people they'd just held accountable would walk free. The sub-basement was colder than Noemi remembered, the hum of the server racks louder and more urgent. Marcus moved through the space with the frantic energy of someone who knew exactly how little time they had. He dropped into the chair at the main workstation, his fingers flying across the keyboard, lines of code scrolling past on the monitors so fast Noemi could barely track them. Dante stood near the door, his phone pressed to his ear, barking orders to someone on the other end. I don't care if you have to reroute every power line in the building. Keep the servers online. If we lose power for even a second, we lose everything. Noemi paced behind Marcus, her arms wrapped around herself. How much time do we have? Marcus didn't look up from the screen. 4 hours, maybe less. The failsafe is designed to be irreversible once it's triggered. The only way to stop it is to manually override the security protocols. But whoever set this up didn't make it easy. Who set it up? Noemi asked. Marcus hesitated, his hands pausing over the keyboard. I did. 3 years ago. Before I knew what the server was really going to be used for, Dante told me it was for financial records, legitimate business. I built in the failsafe to protect against hackers, corporate espionage, government seizures. I never thought it would be used like this. Noemi felt a surge of anger, not at Marcus, but at the situation, at the fact that her brother's brilliance had been weaponized against him. Can you override it? I'm trying, Marcus said, his voice tight. But the system is fighting me. It's like it knows I'm trying to shut it down. Dante ended his call and walked over to the workstation. What do you need? Marcus pulled up a schematic on one of the monitors, a complex web of nodes and connections that looked like a neural network. The failsafe is distributed across multiple servers. To override it, I need to access each node individually and input a master key. But the keys are encrypted, and the encryption changes every 60 seconds. I can crack it, but it's going to take time. How much time? Dante asked. At least 3 hours, Marcus said. And that's if everything goes perfectly. Dante's jaw tightened. We don't have 3 hours to hope for perfection. What's the backup plan? Marcus didn't answer. He just kept typing, his eyes locked on the screen. Noemi stepped closer, her hand on Marcus's shoulder. There's something you're not telling us. What is it? Marcus stopped typing and turned to look at her. His face was pale, his eyes haunted. There's one other way to stop the failsafe. I can manually sever the connection between the servers. But if I do that, the system will lose all its redundancy. One power surge, one server failure, and everything is gone anyway. It's a gamble. And if we don't gamble? Noemi asked. Then the failsafe activates in 4 hours, and everything is erased for sure, Marcus said. Noemi looked at Dante, who was standing with his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. What do you think? Dante was silent for a moment, his eyes moving between the monitors and Marcus. I think we've already gambled by building this system in the first place. And I think if we're going to lose, we might as well lose trying to win. He nodded to Marcus. Sever the connection. Do it now. Marcus hesitated, his hand hovering over the keyboard. If this doesn't work, then we deal with the consequences, Dante said. But we're not going to sit here and wait for the system to destroy itself. Marcus took a deep breath and started typing. The monitors flickered, lines of code shifting and rearranging. Alarms started blaring, red lights flashing across the server racks. And then, with a sudden jarring silence, everything stopped. The hum of the servers died. The monitors went dark. The only sound was the faint buzz of the emergency lights. For a moment, no one moved. No one breathed. And then the monitors flickered back to life, one by one, the screens glowing with a single message. Connection severed. Failsafe disabled. Marcus let out a shaky laugh, his head dropping into his hands. It worked. Oh my God, it actually worked. Noemi felt her knees go weak with relief. She grabbed the edge of the desk to steady herself, her heart pounding. "Is it safe now? Can we turn it back on?" Marcus nodded, already typing again. "Yeah, the failsafe is gone. The system is stable. We're good." Dante walked over to the workstation and placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "Well done." Marcus looked up at him, his expression conflicted. "I didn't do this for you. I did it for Noemi, and for all the people whose names are in that system. They deserve to have their stories told. They deserve justice." "I know," Dante said quietly, "and they'll get it, thanks to you." He turned to Noemi. "The system is live, the fortress is ready, and the people who thought they could operate in the shadows are about to discover what it's like to live in the light." Noemi looked at the monitors, at the names and numbers scrolling past, at the evidence of decades of corruption and cruelty. She thought about all the people who had been hurt, all the lives that had been destroyed, and all the silence that had allowed it to continue. "Then let's make sure they never forget," Noemi said. Dante smiled. "I wouldn't expect anything less." 6 weeks later, the fortress opened its doors. It was called the Raven's Ledger, a name that evoked both justice and judgment, and it quickly became the most feared and respected establishment in Chicago. The building was sleek and modern, all steel and glass, with security measures that made Fort Knox look like a corner store. And at the centre of it all, in an office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, sat Noemi Solis, the auditor. She spent her days reviewing transactions, auditing deals, and holding people accountable. Some of them came willingly, eager to prove they had nothing to hide. Others came reluctantly, dragged in by Dante's security team after they'd tried to run. But all of them left with the understanding that the old way of doing business was over. The first person Noemi audited was Leonard Kess, her mother's oncologist. She'd scheduled the appointment herself, sending him a formal invitation that he couldn't refuse. When he arrived, nervous and sweating, she'd laid out the evidence in front of him. The falsified treatment records, the stolen insurance payments, the families he bankrupted while their loved ones died. Kess had tried to deny it. Then he tried to justify it. And finally, when he realised there was no escape, he'd broken down and confessed. Noemi had given him a choice. He could turn himself in to the authorities and face criminal charges, or he could repay every dollar he'd stolen with interest and spend the rest of his life providing free medical care to low-income patients. He'd chosen the latter, and Noemi had made sure he followed through. Others weren't so lucky. Gregor Lahn, the man who had ordered the hit on Marcus, had refused to cooperate. He tried to threaten Noemi, tried to bribe her, and finally tried to have her killed. Dante had dealt with him personally, and no one had seen Gregor since. Noemi didn't ask what had happened. She didn't need to. Marcus had stayed on to manage the Phantom Protocol, but on his own terms. He worked from a light-filled office on the top floor, not a basement, and he'd built in safeguards to ensure the system could never be used as a weapon again. He and Noemi had dinner together every Sunday, a quiet tradition that helped them both heal from the years they'd spent apart. And Dante, well, Dante remained exactly who he'd always been. A ghost, a force, a man who operated in the shadows but controlled the light. He and Noemi had developed an unusual relationship, one built on mutual respect and a shared understanding of how power worked. He trusted her judgment, she trusted his protection, and together they were reshaping the city. But Noemi never forgot that this wasn't a fairy tale. The fortress wasn't a happy ending. It was a beginning. A fight that would never truly be over. Because there would always be people who thought they were above the rules. People who believed they could hurt others without consequence. And as long as those people existed, Noemi would be there, watching, auditing, holding them accountable. Tonight she stood at the window of her office, looking out at the glittering lights of Chicago. The city was beautiful from up here, all possibility and promise. But she knew what it looked like from the ground. The poverty, the corruption, the pain. She turned away from the window and walked back to her desk, where a new file was waiting. A politician who'd been caught taking bribes. A CEO who'd been dumping toxic waste into the river. A landlord who'd been evicting families in the middle of winter. The work was endless. But Noemi wasn't afraid anymore, because she'd learned something in the ruins of the Gilded Shard. Something that Dante had known all along. Silence in the face of injustice was a confession of cowardice. And the person you thought was the least in the room was often the one holding the keys to your downfall. Noemi picked up the file and started reading. The fight was just beginning, and she was ready. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening. Stories like this matter because they remind us that courage doesn't always look like a hero with a cape. Sometimes it looks like a waitress who refuses to stay silent. Sometimes it looks like a person who's been pushed down so many times that the only direction left is up. Subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story. Share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us about a time you stood up when everyone else stayed quiet. Tell us about the moments that changed you, because your story matters too. And remember, the person who seems powerless might just be the one who changes everything.